everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Colony Drop, the podcast that celebrates the entire meta-genre that is Mobile Suit Gundam. My name is Brian, my co-pilot is Isaac, and today we will conclude our discussion about colony drops. We'll pick up right where we left off last week, discussing the colony drops that occurred in any alternate timelines, so basically everything besides the Universal Century. Hope you all enjoy.
Yeah, moving along, Brian. What is the next series that features colony drops?
The first ones I have after the Universal Century on my list come from Gundam Wing.
Gundam Wing.
So there are two attempted colony drops, both of which failed. I mean, they're both, I guess, known as Operation Meteor, and both are sort of masterminded by Dekim Barton. He was one of the people who wanted to drop the colonies on Earth, and the people, orchestrating it basically refused to participate in such an atrocity, and so they didn't do it in the original series. And instead, they felt the Gundams were enough. Any comments on Operation Meteor, Isaac?
It always felt like Barton was really focused on just being the most powerful man in the Earth sphere. So I never understood why he wanted to destroy the Earth outright, which when you watch Gundam Wing, it makes it pretty clear that I don't think their colonies are any bigger or whatever, but they make it sound like if one colony hits the Earth, it's just, or one meteor even, it's the end of the Earth. So I never really understood why they, well, maybe they just really didn't want to deal with colonies dropping on Earth, so they decided to just make it to a point where it had such devastating repercussions that it wouldn't happen in the series. But I did like that ultimately the Gundams were just enough to deal with defeating the United Earth Sphere Alliance, and they were, because Leos are useless. They might as well be made out of paper. I can't stand Leos. Oh my god, I can't stand any of those mobile suits. They're just the worst. They might be the ugliest mobile. When we do our ugliest mobile suit episode or worst episode or worst, what am I trying to say? Worst looking mobile suits. I'm gonna put like Leos at the top of my list. They're the worst, Brian.
Do you think they're worse than like the Garden Variety GM?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean the Leos, they just have that look of like, I am a grunt and I was cheap.
Comment below if you like Leos and explain why. Why do you like Leos? Nobody likes Leos. They look terrible.
They don't look good. I will agree with you there. I mean, there are a few different types. There's like the space type, the normal type, but they kind of just look different colors. I don't know. They
pretty much.
Yeah. I got like green, purple, and like a different purple. Maybe one with like an extra little jetpack, but the jetpack doesn't really make up for the rest of whatever else is going on there. So
Gundam Wing is definitely a low point in mobile suit design, just because of how bland almost all of their designs are. I mean, it's not all of them though. I will say this. It was the Virgo. I always thought that was a pretty interesting design. But yeah, Leos are just, oh god, the worst.
Operation Meteor, I'll say part 1 was in the original series Gundam Wing. And that's where you can find Isaac's Leos and Virgos. And
I really ran off on that tangent. I apologize. We're talking about colony drops. But yes, back to Gundam Wing and back to the after colony timeline. Those colonies, just based on how they look, it looked like they'd fall apart pretty quickly heading to Earth, more so than the, our O'Neill type island colonies. The Taurus ones look like they're much more fragile. I've always felt. What do you think?
Agree, especially if they entered with the circle face going into the atmosphere. I feel like it would definitely break up because they're just not that big.
That's
and
true.
That'd be a lot of surface area absorbing heat. But I feel like maybe they would survive if they went in on edge. Like a spinning, just a spinning circle of doom.
We got to put a top spin on that, buddy, before we drop it on Earth.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I've always dropping colonies in Gundam Wing doesn't make any sense, because the colonies were united in their little secret plan to build Gundams and use them to attack Earth. What colony would like volunteer and like be, hey, drop us?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess where were they going to go when they dropped it?
Yeah, I think Romefeller and Oz would have noticed, millions of people evacuating from a colony before
well,
it
that's strange. Where
rebels.
Are they going?
Yeah, they're like, well, we should probably deploy our Leos because something's going on.
Yeah. So, Mr. Barton doesn't get his way in the first series. So in the follow-up conclusion movie to the series, Gundam Wing Endless Waltz, he tries to, drop the new colony. There's like a newly created colony in that series. And so he tries to, sort of recreate Operation Meteor. And spoilers, that one doesn't work out either. Those pesky Gundam pilots get in his way and prevent the colony from going down. So this guy, Dekim Barton, I feel like he has the same like colony drop desire as like Delaz
Fetish,
does, but he just can't get it done. Yeah, he just can't get it done. Delaz, he stole 2 colonies in one day, bounced them off each other, and no one even expected it. But this Barton guy, he had a whole elaborate plan. He tried it twice, couldn't get it to work. I don't know.
Delaz pulled something off, like stealing a car, and like it only has so much gas in the tank, but like a bunch of the highway patrol are chasing you, but they're also running out of gas. And then at the last minute, you like out of nowhere, like this fuel truck comes and like refuels you while you're driving. And then you just change direction, and like the highway patrol just gasses out and is in shock at like what happened. Like
Yeah.
One thing we're missing though from Gundam Wing is an attempted drop by a battleship. Well, okay. Everybody, I'm sure you saw Gundam Wing. You're a fan. You're listening to us right now. Libra, they call it a space battleship, but I always viewed it as sort of a space battle station. It didn't really seem like it was too mobile to me. It just seemed more like an orbiting fortress with a big super weapon. They actually tried dropping that on Earth at the end of the series. I believe it's the White Fang rebellion. They tried dropping Libra on Earth as revenge. Or actually, I think Zex is behind it. But of course, shockingly, it gets destroyed by one of the heroes. Hero Yui, literally the hero.
A bit on the nose.
Yeah, Earth is saved. But the Gundam Wing, this was in keeping with Gundam Wing always threatening to drop one thing on Earth that would completely destroy it. Because first Libra blasts Earth with its cannon, and then they threaten, Libra's on its way, it's going to fall. And if it does, it'll, completely destroy Earth. But it never does. So Libra is sort of an honorable mention. Not really a colony, but definitely on the scale of approaching a colony, if not greater than a colony.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where to draw the line between, ship, station, colony, asteroid.
I'm going to chalk up battleship to being a bad translation. Maybe they meant like, some type of a ocean going or space going fortress or something. Mm-hmm. But the translation was bad. But that does not look like a battleship or any other ship that they use in that series.
Yeah. So maybe we should view Libra similar to how we view Axis.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a large mass object that gets dropped.
Okay. Well, if we go in release order, the next series would be Gundam X. So Gundam X takes sort of a different approach to colony drops, whereas all the colony drops we just talked about were very individual and discrete events with a lot of sort of surrounding plot details around them. They all sort of serve a purpose for the story, maybe with the exception of, Delaz's assault on the cornfields of America. But in Gundam X, we're kind of just told that the series opens 15 years after the 7th Space War, which was ended by basically dozens of colonies being dropped on Earth. And these colonies are comparable to the ones in the Universal Century. They use the same design. They appear to be the same relative size. So if we imagine 10, 20, 30 Operation Britishes happening at the same time, one could imagine the negative effects that would happen to the planet.
This one's always fascinated me and raised a lot of questions. It had like huge implications too. As I've discussed with you privately, Brian, the fact that they did this many colony drops, and to my knowledge, there were really only 2 colonies left after the mass colony drop, we'll call it. That means everybody was inside the colonies as they fell.
I mean, they kind of have to be. I don't see how you could evacuate all of them.
No,
because you'd have to put them in other colonies, and I don't know that each colony has that much free space.
There's no way. Yeah,
I suppose.
So I'm so conflicted about this because like that means that the Space Revolutionary Army either killed their own people and then launched the colonies, or they launched the colonies and the people were still alive inside. Did they get everybody to agree to this by saying, okay, we're going to announce that we're going to drop all of our colonies, obviously except their capital? How convenient. But at
I
the
mean,
last
no
minute,
one would
we're
agree
actually,
to that, though.
yeah. Well, I'm not sure how zealous the members of the colonies were, because if you watch in the series, it's very clear that they're almost cult-like in their worship of new types, and the Space Revolutionary Army leadership has a very tight control of the colonies. So I'm really I just have so many questions. It's fascinating. I really wish we got to see the Seventh Space War. It would have been great to see just how people could have agreed to have their colonies pretty much get ready to attack and get dropped. Was every colony part of the Space Revolutionary Army, or were they pretty much dropping, empty colonies that they'd gassed? That's a possibility too. For all we know, the Space Revolutionary Army was just one side. There's just a lot of questions, but yeah, the opening of that series is just so awesome. Awesome and terrifying. Seeing so many colonies just filling up the sky, falling to Earth. It must have been just pure hell, however many hours it took until they finished falling on Earth.
Yeah, and to give everyone an idea of the impact, so 9 billion people died. That's billion with a B.
Yeah.
So, and it only left 98 million people remaining on Earth.
Yeah, and it blocked out the sun on a scale that normal colony drops don't, because of just how many fell. That it reached the point where the Space Revolutionary Army was just, the remnants of it were just waiting in space, just observing, not even sure if anybody survived, if there was ever even a point of going back to Earth. So there was just no way for them to observe what was happening, because they can't see through the all the dust that's in the air. It was probably worse than any nuclear winter.
And life on the planet turned into sort of this lawless, everyone for themselves kind of life. So it's a very interesting series. We never got a follow-up. I really enjoyed the series. It was made in the mid to late 90s, I guess. It was the series right after Gundam Wing. I think the suit designs were maybe a little too close to Gundam Wing for it to gain a huge amount of popularity. I don't know. It didn't really seem to catch on, but I thought it was a good series. I really enjoyed it.
It was very much a love letter to Mad Max, with how lawless the Earth is, and there's all these bandits at the beginning, and it's a post-apocalyptic setting. But it's a really great series, great mobile suits, great interesting setup, very rushed. That's its biggest weakness, that they sort of had less episodes than normal, so they rushed along the story. Overall, pretty interesting, just based on its name and everything that happens. You could assume it almost happened in a later part of the Universal Century. But
interesting you mentioned that. So
yeah.
they do call it the Seventh Space War because I believe it was the seventh Gundam series.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I don't remember if people still think this now, but I remember back in the day, people always felt that this timeline was vague enough that, like you said, it could be construed as a future of the Universal Century. I mean, that obviously is probably not true in the canon. But it uses the same colonies, same strategy, colony drops. So,
I mean, just looking at the mobile suits too, it's not a far-fetched to assume that the I think it was the United Earth is the faction. Their mobile suits evolved from Gigans or GMs, and just like the mono eyes of the Space Revolutionary Army, they could have easily evolved from Zaku's and the Doms and all the Xeon type mobile suits. And it does beg the question, if this is the Seventh Space War, what happened in 1 through 6? Maybe in this timeline, the first Space Wars are looked back on in their history books as being anything about Xeon. And then second is, who knows, Crossbone, and third Zanscare, and etc. Who knows? It's a mystery.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
But you're right, though. I think maybe the most interesting part of the series is that opening. I don't know if it's exactly in the first episode, but whenever they tell the flashback about the Seventh Space War, I do wish, like you said, maybe we had a whole episode or a few episodes dedicated to showing that Space War.
Yeah, I mean, some of the characters do have flashbacks when they were, fighting in that war, actually. But, for the most part, the whole series is just in the aftermath of it.
Okay, the next colony drop on my list is, it'll be an honorable mention, I suppose, because it was a failed colony drop, so we'll just mention it briefly. But in Turn A Gundam, which is a series that aired in 1999 and 2000, there is an attempted colony drop on the moon, but the main character, Lauren, blows up the colony with a nuke, and the plot is foiled. I don't know. Any comments on that one, Isaac? Sort of. I just want to mention it because it is a attempted colony drop, but not real impactful overall for the series.
No, I feel like that series' greatest strength was just how much it showed that far into the distant future, it was revealed that all these Gundam series were just happening in the same timeline. But I think it was interesting that, you know, they did show that maybe the villains, more or less, of the show, the Moon Race, would come under existential threat themselves with the colony drop. So that was interesting. We don't really see too many colony drop attempts on the moon, but overall, not as important as that, you know, that mind-blowing, you know, near final episode where they show what dark history is.
And the Moonlight Butterfly.
Yeah, that too. And I think another reason we don't see too many colonies in that series is because they explain pretty interestingly that colonies were either destroyed or they
you don't say.
Yeah, or they wisely just turned themselves into generation ships and just booked it out of the solar system to more peaceful parts of the universe.
Perhaps they were destroyed in the 7th Space War.
It's possible too. Ooh, it could have dropped, right? Turn A includes footage of Gundam X, so completely possible.
All right, and the last one that I have on my list comes from what I'll call one of the modern series, Gundam Seed. I know Seed was one of your favorite shows, Isaac, so why don't you tell us a little bit about Junius 7, or what you remember about Junius 7?
Okay, Junius 7 was obviously one of the plants, one of the orbiting colonies that were populated by coordinators, which for our fans that haven't seen Gundam Seed yet or forgot about it, a coordinator is a human who has been genetically modified in the womb or in an artificial womb. Generally, they have greater physical capabilities, mental capabilities, but they mostly live in space because of massive discrimination and outright hostile murderous intent against them on Earth. Anyways, getting back to the colony itself. So this colony was destroyed during the Bloody Valentine War, and in Gundam Seed, a group of Zaft pilots still loyal to the dead villain from Gundam Seed decide to drop it on Earth and destroy the Earth. They're not dropping the entire colony. They're really dropping only like the bottom half of it, the bottom giant disk that used to house part of the population. And these colonies, the plant colonies, I always felt in Gundam Seed never really looked as massive as the colonies in, you know, Universal Century Island type colonies, O'Neill cylinder colonies. But in the story itself of Gundam Seed, supposedly if this made it landfall on Earth completely intact, it would have destroyed all life on Earth. Fortunately, in Gundam Seed Destiny, the characters are able to work together and destroy, I think, half of it, or at least prevent, you know, all of it from falling on Earth. So it still leads to massive devastation and is maybe the best look at the effects of a colony drop on Earth, or at least a colony that split up and still fell on Earth, because they show us really the global view, an international view of the colony making its impact. It just devastates almost every continent. We see the South Pacific get just annihilated by tsunamis. We see, you know, Rome get just wiped off the map. It's nuts. They just show so many impacts around the world. And it really becomes understandable, I guess, how the Earth Alliance could rally together again just when they made peace and decided to attack the plants and Zaft again. Whoa, that was a lot. Sorry for the wall of text.
No, I like it. It was good. It's good.
All right.
The thing I like about this colony drop is that, you know, they dropped it in Seed Destiny because of events that happened in Seed. So I did like that it connected the two series a bit. You know, I think it rewards you as the viewer for having watched both series. So I did really enjoy that. And then, like you said, I guess having gone through all these different colony drops, you're right. We don't have a huge example where one broke apart and hit like multiple targets. So that is definitely a really cool, like, unique thing about this colony drop that none of the other ones have.
Yeah, this is actually also the only colony drop where we get a musical number, because Lacus and some orphans decide to seek shelter in a bunker as the colony's falling. So she sings "Fields of Hope" as you watch really brutal images of the colony falling, of people trying to get to safety, and bunkers being full. And they really, say what you will about Gundam Seed and Gundam Seed Destiny, but there's a lot of times where they really put a lot of human moments into a show about giant robots. They show a man really talking to his mother and trying to get her to evacuate, but she refuses to leave her home. And then the colony starts falling. They show, massive lines of cars trying to get into bunkers, but, it's closed, and monuments around the world being destroyed. Like I think they show the Parthenon just getting wiped off the face of Greece. It's a pretty, it was quite the way to kick off Gundam Seed Destiny.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll revisit it whenever they come out with that dub, or the new dub.
It's gonna be a new dub, a remastered dub.
Yeah, supposedly they're redubbing it.
I don't think that's necessary, but sure, why not? I'll take it. I maybe we should like send them an email, Brian. We'll be like, you know what? You guys really need to work on like the dub for Double Zeta, because you're just or Victory or something. You're wasting your time. You're wasting our time. We've already heard it.
It is weird. I agree. So that completes my list, Isaac. Do you have any other colony drops on your list?
No, that's it. These were all things that were dropped. I think in G Gundam there was maybe the threat of dropping Neo Japan, but I don't think that really ever became an actual situation, because I think at that point the Dark Gundam, the Devil Gundam, just decided to stay where it was and drain the Earth of resources, right?
Yeah, it's been a while since I watched G Gundam. That sounds right. Again, those are different colonies. I'm not even sure we could lump them in the same bucket.
We can't categorize those colonies because they're too diverse.
Yeah, the physics on those are just too complicated. So many shapes.
It would be like trying to like categorize. Well, no, I was about to say the shapes of clouds, but there's different types of clouds. But I meant like the actual shape of a cloud. You can't say, well, we have our animal shapes and our like household object shapes. No, it's not going to work. They're too diverse.
Yeah. So leave us a comment. Tell us what your favorite colony drop was. Do you hate the Dublin colony drop like Isaac?
Let me pose another question. How could you stop a colony drop? Because nobody really seems that good at stopping them. I've been trying to think about this. Like, do you put the nuke inside and then you set it off to try to like blow up the colony that way? But that doesn't work, because when Xeon was blowing up colonies, they put nukes inside, and the blast was contained within the colony. So I would assume that meant that a colony would keep falling. If you tried that, do you blow out the engines? Does that do nothing? Because you would know this more than I, Brian. But at that point, inertia is already in effect, and that thing's going to fall anyways, no matter what you do to those engines.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to stop it before it reaches the point of no return, where it's, before it enters Earth's gravity well, I suppose. Once it enters that, you're kind of screwed unless you can pull off the axis shock like Amuro and whoever else was helping him. So your best bet at that point would be to start breaking into a bunch of little pieces, I guess. But some of those pieces are going to make it through, and you're going to end up with a Junius 7, situation.
Brian, let me ask you this: as our resident Federation officer, can a solar system actually destroy a colony like in 083? Would their plan have worked if that control ship wasn't destroyed, or they had more time to set it up and they didn't have to worry about the Laz fleet for whatever reason?
I mean, I think we have to assume that it certainly would have worked to an extent great enough that it was worth trying. Maybe it doesn't completely vaporize the colony, but as long as you could maybe break it up into small enough pieces that those pieces would burn up upon re-entry, then yeah, I mean, you don't have to vaporize the whole colony itself. You just have to reduce the damage to an acceptable level, especially when you're the Earth Federation and you don't care about your inhabitants the way that they don't.
I really wish I could have figured out what Bascom's plan was, like what was the perfect conspiracy plan. That the last fleet gets destroyed or stopped by Shima, and then the colony's still falling to Earth, but their effective plan, which they've clearly had months or even weeks to to work out since this was all a conspiracy, were they just going to cook the colony in 083 and then just start bombarding it with nukes and particle cannons, and that would have done the job? Or Was the solar system really going to do everything, assuming it, you know, was able to complete its firing? We'll never know, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever know, but I would imagine their plan was fire the solar system as much as possible and do as much, break it up as much as possible and see where that gets you. And then, mop it up afterwards, I suppose.
I think they put that might have been the death knell for solar systems, because we never see them attempt to like use them again against a colony. Like maybe they gave up. Like Bascom was like he was their best shot, their best solar system guy, and he failed when they needed him most.
I mean, it is a very fragile weapon, right? And every panel that you take out, lowers your efficiency by X%, which we saw in that show. So I could definitely see why it's expensive and hard to maintain, and it's great, I guess, if you have it set up in time. But it's a creative weapon. I like it whenever it shows up.
What I like about it is that it's like, as long as you've used a mirror before and made like a glare, and gone in like in someone's eyes, or somebody put like a glare in your eyes, or that the reflection of the sun off a watch or something, it could theoretically work.
You're like, oh no, I know exactly what that is.
You know what? If we had enough of those mirrors, we could cook a colony.
It's basically a bigger version of Archimedes.
Oh yeah. His little Greek doomsday weapon.
Yeah. I mean, I think they tested that on MythBusters and it didn't actually work, or maybe it did, but not to the great effect that it's described to have.
In their defense, I mean, they were essentially the small production crew of a television show trying to put together a weapon that a Greek alliance would have probably been heavily invested in. And I'm sure Archimedes, not to discredit the MythBusters, but Archimedes his mind was probably magnitudes greater than anyone on MythBusters. I'm going to say the weapon worked, but we have no traces of what it actually looked like or blueprints and such, because it was an Athenian state secret.
Yeah, maybe they should have called it Project Archimedes or something. The solar system, that would have been.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. Oh, we just got a new side story idea. Ooh,
resurrecting the solar system.
Because we know they had to build a solar system just for the Battle of Solomon. So there's a side story there, Brian.
There you go. There you go.
Solar Gundam.
I like it. Archimedes Gundam.
Gundam Sunburst. Yeah. Actually, Gundam Archimedes sounds exactly like what they'd name a Gundam.
It does, but it would be in like that would fit right in like Iron Blooded Orphans or something.
Oh, this is brilliant! Like it's a silver Gundam or something like that, where it like deploys like its own little.
It is a solar system
itself, right? Yeah, pretty much. Wow. Oh, it's going to cook so many Xeons. But it has to be facing the sun.
Mini solar system array. It's kind of like the Gundam X, because the Gundam X had those solar panels.
Yeah, but those always just seemed... I never understood why those were reflective, because it's completely reliant on that dish on Luna beaming it energy. Who cares what shape it's in or if they're reflective? It's a receiver, not a... not for solar power.
Yeah, it's more of a plot device. It seemed pretty neat, though.
It's awesome. Well, that's it for our Colony Drop episode about Colony Drops on Colony Drops, listening to Colony Drops. We talked about all the Colony Drops, and don't look up in the sky, because there's probably going to be a colony dropped on you soon.
So leave us a comment below. What was your favorite colony drop? Did we miss a colony drop that you know about that we didn't mention?
Do you hate the Dublin colony drop as much as we do? Because it breaks like the logic of the show. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you don't hit that like button, if you don't subscribe, you know what's going to happen? We're going to drop a colony on your house. We're going to drop a colony, multiple colonies even, all over your neighborhood.
And just to make it ugly, they're going to be like the Dublin one.
Yeah, just going to be a pole sticking up in the sky.
All right, everybody.
Catch you next time.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Colony Drop. Thanks for listening.